Shabbat Shalom. This time of Cheshbon Nefesh, of soul searching, happens to also coincide this year with a particular effort to uncover the causes of the terrible tragedy at Meron that happened in Israel on Lag BaOmer. You may remember that on Lag BaOmer, as it is considered to be by tradition the yahrzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who is purported to be the author of the Zohar, that many hundreds of thousands of people will flock to his tomb in Meron, in northern Israel. This last year, unfortunately, during this time of mass gathering, there was a crush. A stampede is not the right word. It was a movement of bodies that was uncontrolled, and it is one of the worst loss of life in Israel's history during peacetime. And so, of course, after such a disaster, everyone has to ask, why? What happened? What was the cause? The investigation has only just begun. It was blocked by the previous administration. But with the new government in Israel, they are investigating. And so far, the preliminary results seem to be quite clear that the main cause for the death was that it was built with complete disregard for the safety regulations that Israel has in place, much like the United States, regulations to govern how many people fit in certain areas, what sort of exits there need to be, how those exits have to be constructed, precisely to prevent massive loss of life if too many people are pushed into too small of a space. Now, the next few weeks, or perhaps a little bit later after the high holidays, are going to be filled with more investigations, witnesses, and testimony to try and establish whose fault is it that those safety regulations were ignored. The safety inspectors are going to be grilled. Those who came and gave their oversight are going to be grilled. Those who are in charge of that site are going to be grilled. But ultimately, we'll allow that to work itself through the system of investigation and courts. But we need to make sure we don't lose sight of that original decision, which was the regulations don't apply here. That the people who were constructing that area, knowing that there would be hundreds of thousands of people, had before them the book of regulations and building codes, and they looked at them and said, these need not be followed. These are unimportant. We can do without this. Now that may sound like a very modern cavalier attitude, but hopefully you were paying attention during the Torah reading today, because if you did, you will have seen that in Nitzavim, Moses anticipated this exact mentality. He said, as he has gathered everyone together, I know there's someone out there that is listening to all of this entire book of Devarim, this recount of the mitzvot, the recount of what will be the reward and what will be the punishment and consequence for failing to follow the mitzvot. And I know that somebody is sitting there going, it doesn't apply to me. Doesn't apply to me. Yeah, my neighbor, the other guy over there, that guy better follow it, but me, Ibilibo, in his heart, says Moses, he is saying, it will be shalom for me. I'll be fine even if I ignore all that Moses is saying over and over and over again. And I know sometimes when I'm giving a sermon, I have that same feeling that maybe not everybody's taking this to heart, but for Moses, come on, how do you ignore the words of Moses and say in your heart, this doesn't apply, I'll have shalom, I'll have peace. Well, of course, our commentators have to weigh in of how anyone could have this audacity. And there are, of course, because it is Jewish study, multiple opinions. The first opinion is fairly straightforward. The guy says, look, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You can go on and on and on about all these commandments, Moses, but my mind is already made up. I'm going to follow my own way. And all of the punishments, curses, and problems that you say will come from failing to fulfill the mitzvot, I don't buy it. I think I can get away with it. I don't think that it'll ever come back to haunt me. The consequences will never catch up with me. Perhaps this was the attitude of the people in Meron, who said, look, I know there's a building code, but what are the odds that something will really go wrong that this building code would have helped with? Instead, shortcut, we're good, it'll be fine, yeh tov, it'll be okay. Perhaps that was their thinking. On the other hand, say the commentators, perhaps this is a person who is focusing on belibo. In his heart, he is saying this, meaning he is waiting for the community to come round. Secretly, he will break all the commandments he wants to break in the privacy of his own home. But what he's really hoping for is that once this Moses guy is dead and buried, then the community will snap out of all of this, morality stuff, and everyone will come around to his way of thinking, that he is biding his time, and he doesn't believe that the curses will catch up to him because he believes eventually society will catch up to him and be on his side. That everyone will believe that the morality that Moses was preaching was a complete waste of time, and we can go back to being good pagan idolaters and acting in what the Torah would consider immoral. Murder, theft. No, don't do that. I'll do it if I want to. And eventually everyone will agree, and then who's going to stop me? Meron, perhaps the people who did what they did believed that the regulations simply were pointless. I find that harder to believe, but it is possible that they were simply anti-regulation. The third case, however, says a little bit different. The third case, our commentators say, of this person who says in his heart, is he's looking around the room, or rather the field, if you will, at the time, while Moses is giving his speech, and he's going, yeah, that guy's going to follow the rules, and that guy's going to follow the rules, and him, and him, and him, and her, and her, and her. Yeah, you know what? What's one person not following the rules going to do? The rest of them, they can conform, they can follow the rules, and the blessings that God is giving to us and to our nation, you know what? I can ride their coattails. Why should I have to conform if everyone else is already doing it for me? That way I can get the best of both worlds. I can live in a land and a community that is blessed by good people living well, and I can be as immoral, bad, wicked as I want to be. And what's God going to do? Single me out? Come on. If God's going to get us, it's going to be because we're all bad, not because one of us is bad. So I can just slide through the crowd while they all do the good, righteous thing, and I reap the rewards, as well as get to do whatever my immoral heart tells me to do. Reading through this commentary this week reminded me very much of a very old story, and I was welcome for it because it's a story my grandmother used to tell me. How many of you heard the story of the little red hen? A few hands. Good, because it's a story that, it's like the good stories, which is short, repetitive, and absolutely appropriate in every century of humanity. The story goes roughly the follows, and my apologies to my grandmother for my retelling of it. She did it much better, I'm sure. Little red hen decides that she wants to have some bread. So the little red hen goes to the other farmyard creatures and says, "Who will help me plant the grain?" And little brown cow says, "Not I," says the little brown cow. "Not I," says the little white sheep. And I'm not going to go through the whole farmyard like my grandmother would, but basically all the other animals say, "Not I. I'm not going to help you plant the grain." The grain grows after the little red hen plants it, and she goes out to harvest it, and she says, "Who will help me harvest the grain?" "Not I," said the little brown cow. "Not I," said the little white sheep, and so on through all the other animals, and so little red hen gathers all the wheat. She eventually ends up having to thresh it herself. She ends up having to grind it herself. She ends up having to bake it herself. And once the bread is done, she says to the barnyard, "Who will help me eat the bread?" "I will," said the little brown cow. "I will," said the little white sheep, and so on with all the other animals. At which point, in the traditional telling of the story, she tells them, "Too bad, it's for my kids." And they don't get to have any bread. Now, the little red hen story is talking about a problem that has been around since at least the days of the Torah, which is societal freeloading. Now, societal freeloading, most people take to mean somebody who is freeloading monetarily on the society. But that is not actually the primary form of this crisis for most communities. For someone to freeload monetarily, meaning to say that they are asking for additional money and help in ways that they have not contributed, well, that's fairly normal because different people have different ups and downs economically. The Torah itself puts into place laws for helping those that are poor, which it would not do if they were considered to be bad. The Torah puts into place ways to make sure that there are redistribution of wealth to ensure that no one is ever permanently impoverished. The Torah takes care of those who need additional economic assistance. Societal freeloading comes from somebody who chooses to benefit from all of the social good of his community, its honesty, its faithfulness, its compassion and mercy, while giving none of that back to the community in return. This is societal freeloading. When everyone else is honest with their contracts, you are the cheat. When everyone else looks after their neighbors when there is a crisis or catastrophe, helping to clear the tree that fell down, helping to take care of the flood and build sandbags for them, when everyone else helps the neighbor, you do nothing. But when it is your house flooding, you absolutely expect, hope, and would be very bitter and disappointed if they didn't show up with the sandbags for your house. This is the classic form of societal freeloading that every community has to work with. Now, Judaism has basically said, yes, we know this can be a problem, but we are going to focus primarily on the neshama, on the soul of each individual, to inspire them to help each other, not just for the benefit they'll receive through reciprocity, but through the reward that comes from having lived a good and righteous life. But that's not always enough. And so Torah also lays out that those who behave badly, they will receive punishment. Whether it be at the hands of the community, if you are a cheat, you will be taken before the court and you will be punished for your fraud, or whether it be at the hands of heaven. Whether in this world, rarely, more often in the world to come, there will be a reckoning. You can push off your balance as far as you wish, but eventually it will come due when you stand before the throne. This is one of the main reasons for the motif of viewing God as king during Rosh Hashanah, during this period of our cheshbon nefesh, of our spiritual accounting. But we still work in this world to try and even that balance. And we still use social condemnation to try and encourage people to do better. We tell stories like the story of the little red hen. We look at catastrophes like Meron, and we write scathing opinion articles to say, how could someone be so callous, so blind to the potential for disaster, as to think that these rules didn't apply to them? And we look at situations like our current COVID system, and we ask people, who will help us to stop the spread of the virus? By wearing masks, by getting vaccinated, by staying socially distant. And we worry that there will be too many little brown cows and too many little white sheep that say, not I. We look at businesses that are being hurt so badly by the fluctuations of the economy and by the difficulty at this time, and we ask, who will help us support them during this time of uncertainty so that people are not being put out of work, that they are able to establish themselves and stay. And we worry that there might be too many little brown cows and little white sheep that say, not I. Why should I help them? And we also worry that there will be too many little brown cows and little white sheep that when they are ill or their business is collapsing because of the situation, will show up knocking at the door of the community and saying, help, I want to eat the bread. I want to use the hospital beds. I want to use these special programs to support failing businesses. Not that I would have supported them, but now that I am in need of them, give me. Now, Little Red Hen, pardon my saying this, wasn't Jewish. Because in Judaism, we don't say, get your own bread. In Judaism, we say, we are sorry for this tragedy affecting you. Here is a bed. Here is the medicine that can cure you after you have tried all of the snake oil that you have purchased. Here, have actual medicine that will help. And yes, we understand that you refused, voted against, whatever you want to say, against helping those that were going through this crisis. But we will help you. We will help you in your crisis. Because that is how we establish a society that will maintain that social capital among those who are not the societal freeloaders. And that is absolutely essential, says Torah. We cannot allow a bitterness, resentfulness, anger to consume any group. Because to do so is to dissolve everything that binds us together. As much as some may want to indulge in the Schadenfreude, ironically a German word, of rejoicing at someone else's misfortune, Judaism says no. Those who have misfortune within our community are our brothers and our sisters, and they need our help and our love. It doesn't mean we have to agree with everything they do, but it does mean we have to help them with every way that we can. And so when we get past this crisis, and we will get past this crisis, we will remain brothers and sisters still, perhaps even stronger and better. But if we give in to recriminations, to bitterness, to anger and hate, and if we withhold our love, our compassion, our care from others that are in need, then we will be nothing more than a barnyard full of bickering animals. And we will have more disasters of worse scope, and we will continue to suffer and become more and more alone. Little Red Hen should have shared her bread, and the other animals, having tasted it, might have helped the next time to help it grow. That is the only way that we move forward. Shabbat Shalom.